What if I told you that we know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the bottom of our own ocean? It's strange, isn't it? That we spend billions peering up at stars millions of light years away, but less than a fraction of that to understand the darkness just beneath our feet. A darkness that covers 71% of Earth's surface, and yet hides more secrets than the cosmos ever dared to. Tonight, we are not reaching for the stars. We are sinking, slowly, quietly, intentionally. This is a descent into Earth's most mysterious frontier, the deep sea, a place untouched by sunlight and ruled not by time but by pressure, stillness and silence. Close your eyes if they aren't already. Listen closely, because as you drift, so will we. And the deeper we go, the quieter everything becomes. Let's begin where all journeys start. The surface. You're floating, calm, weightless. The sky above you is cloudless, an infinite blue mirror. You can hear waves gently lapping, and beneath you, just water. It feels peaceful, safe, familiar. But this illusion is skin deep, because under your feet lies a world more alien than outer space. And now we begin our descent. The first few meters are like diving into a dream. Sunlight pierces the water in long golden fingers. Schools of fish flash silver in the beams. Coral reefs bloom like underwater cities. Colourful, teeming, alive. But this won't last long. As we descend past 200 meters, we cross into what oceanographers call the mesopelagic zone, but you might know it better as the twilight zone. Here, sunlight fades fast. Blue and green are the last colours to vanish, the only wavelengths capable of reaching these depths. Red disappears first, vanishing into blackness almost instantly. That's why many deep-sea creatures are red. It makes them invisible. It's not just the light that changes. The pressure increases too. At sea level, you feel the weight of 1 atmosphere of pressure. That's normal. But by the time we've reached 1,000 meters below, we're under the crushing force of 100 atmospheres. That's like having a fully loaded cement truck parked on every square inch of your body. And yet, life continues. The ocean doesn't resent the pressure. It adapts. Creatures here have no bones, or if they do, they're soft and gelatinous. Their flesh moves like jello. Their eyes are huge because light is rare. They're quiet, slow, and deliberate. You may notice your heartbeat slowing, as if your body instinctively knows it's entering a calmer world. Have you ever noticed how silence underwater feels different? It's not the absence of sound, it's the muffling of presence. Like the world is listening instead of speaking, and the deeper you go, the more that sensation grows. At 500 meters down, we pass the last diving records of sperm whales, the titans of the deep who plunge into darkness to battle giant squid. No sunlight reaches them here. They use echolocation, clicking and pulsing sound to navigate and hunt. They speak in sonar symphonies. In a strange way, sound travels better here than light ever could. In fact, sound can travel 4 times faster in water than in air. So imagine that. The quiet you feel now isn't due to silence, but to how far sound travels before it ever returns. We are now in a realm where sight fails and hearing becomes your compass. As we pass 1,000 meters, we leave the twilight behind. We are entering the midnight zone. Total darkness, eternal night. This is a world without seasons, without day or night, without weather. Only the slow drift of currents and the slow rain of organic matter falling from above, the so-called marine snow. Imagine snowflakes, but instead of ice, it's bits of dead plankton, fish scales, fecal matter, even whale bones, drifting for days or weeks from the ocean surface to the bottom like gentle ash from a forgotten fire. This snow feeds everything down here. Everything. Let's pause for a moment. Think about that. A whale dies in the sunlit shallows, and its nutrients drift for miles to feed fish that never even see the sky. One death gives life to thousands, slowly, quietly, over time. There is no waste in the deep. There is only transformation. The temperature here is just a few degrees above freezing, between 0 to 4 degrees Celsius, 32 to 39 degrees Fahrenheit. And yet, creatures live. Some of them glow in brilliant blues and greens. This is bioluminescence, nature's flashlight in a world of shadows. Roughly 76% of known deep-sea animals are bioluminescent. They produce their own light to lure prey, distract predators, or communicate. Imagine a jellyfish, shaped like a chandelier, glowing soft turquoise with every pulse, or a tiny shrimp that shoots out glowing ink to escape a predator, like a firefly meeting an octopus. Each one a lighthouse in the black, each one a secret, barely illuminated. Now let's think about what we're not seeing, because for all the known species, it's estimated that 80% of the ocean remains unexplored. Entire ecosystems might exist beneath us that we've never witnessed, maybe never will. There could be life forms below that don't follow the rules, creatures without oxygen, without DNA, without light. Are they animals, fungi, something else entirely? We don't know. And that might be the most honest sentence you can say about the deep sea. We don't know. Still descending. By now, the water above you weighs as much as a skyscraper. The pressure is so intense it would collapse a human body in seconds. But you're weightless, suspended. Time begins to slip. In the deep sea, time loses its meaning. There's no circadian rhythm, no sun to rise or set. Some deep-sea creatures live hundreds of years. Others reproduce once and then vanish. A few have remained unchanged since the dinosaur age. You start to wonder, what does time mean to a creature that's never seen the sun? To a fish that's never known anything but pressure and darkness? We are now over 2,000 meters deep, 2 kilometers below the surface. This is the average depth of the ocean, and yet we've only just begun. The seafloor itself lies much deeper. Ridges, valleys, mountains. The ocean has its own topography, just like Earth's surface. Only no one lives there to name the peaks. No one charts the valleys, except us, right now, together. Before we end this first part of our journey, I want you to imagine this. Right now, you are drifting in a world without light, without time, and without sound. You are deeper than any sunlight can reach, and yet, all around you, things live, glow, breathe. Even here, life endures. And that may be the most powerful truth of all. The deeper you go, the more you find that the silence isn't empty. It's full of stories, you just have to be quiet enough to hear them. But we've only scratched the surface, ironically, by diving beneath it. So let's continue. Downward, deeper, farther. Below 2,000 meters, you enter the bathypelagic zone, what scientists call the midnight zone. Here, zero sunlight penetrates, not a single photon. Your eyes, if they were even useful anymore, would see nothing but black. In this realm, light must be created, not received. That's why bioluminescence is the most common language here. Consider the anglerfish, that terrifying deep-sea ambassador, with her needle-sharp teeth and a fishing lure of glowing flesh hanging from her forehead. It's not just a quirk of nature, it's evolution with a sense of theatre. She drifts motionless in the water, her glowing lure mimicking the weak light of a smaller organism. Her prey, drawn in by that soft promise of food, approaches, and then gone. No chase, no fight, just silence and satisfaction. Some call it monstrous, but maybe it's just practical. At these depths, survival is a slow, deliberate act. There is no rushing in the deep. Metabolism slows. Reproduction is rare. Movement, when it happens, is sluggish, like shadows drifting through oil. Here, oxygen is scarce but not absent. The creatures that thrive here know how to conserve energy, how to wait, sometimes for weeks, for their next meal. Imagine having a life where patience isn't just a virtue, it's a necessity for existence. The pressure now is almost 300 times that of the surface. That's like holding the weight of a dozen subway trains on your body, and yet it doesn't feel violent, it feels still. That's the paradox of the deep sea. What would kill us instantly brings perfect peace to the creatures that belong here. Their cells have adapted to these conditions over millions of years. They are pressure sculpted, Many have no air pockets, no lungs, no bladders, nothing that can be crushed. Their bodies are soft, flexible. They become the pressure. It makes you wonder, are they fragile? Or are we? As we drift farther, you begin to notice something strange. The concept of direction begins to fade. There is no up or down in this vast darkness, only outward. It's disorienting. There is no horizon, no surface, no light. Your brain, trained on sunlight and shadows, begins to surrender the idea of orientation. And in that surrender, there is calm. The ocean is the perfect place to let go of schedules, of stress, of self. Down here there is no ego, no status, no past or future, only now. The creatures that live here don't fight for territory. They barely interact at all. Most of the time they're alone, existing, surviving, drifting. It's tempting to call it lonely, but maybe it isn't. Maybe it's simply peaceful. Maybe life doesn't need to be loud or social or fast to be valid. Maybe life at its deepest is quiet and full of knowing. Below us now, at nearly 3,000 meters, the seafloor begins to take shape. Not flat, like you might imagine. The ocean floor is mountainous. Ridge after ridge, trench after trench, volcanoes rising unseen by any eye. In fact, if the ocean were drained, Earth would look far more alien than any science fiction planet. You'd see underwater mountain ranges taller than the Rockies, and trenches deeper than Everest is tall. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge, for example, stretches 10,000 miles, longer than the Andes, Rockies, and Himalayas combined. And almost no one knows that. Imagine building a planet, hiding all its most dramatic features under a vast liquid curtain, and then leaving them untouched for millions of years. That's what Earth has done. Here on the seafloor, cold, black, motionless, you'll find creatures that defy classification, like the Dumbo octopus, with ear-like fins that flap softly as it glides through the still water, or the sea pig, a pale, blobby scavenger that walks on delicate, tube-like legs and feeds on the marine snow, or the giant amphipods, shrimp-like crustaceans the size of house cats, crawling over whale bones in the darkness. Nothing down here looks the way we expect life to look, and maybe that's the point. Maybe our expectations were always surface-bound. At this depth, the ocean is no longer just a habitat, it becomes a mirror, a place that reflects us back to ourselves in distorted, dreamlike form. Think about it. The deeper you go in the sea, the more you leave behind. Light, noise, time, ego. What remains? The essentials, adaptation, persistence, existence. Things that don't depend on beauty or light or speed. Things that endure. And just when you think you've reached the bottom, you haven't. Because below the seafloor lies another mystery, the subsurface biosphere. Yes, beneath the ocean floor, buried under rock and sediment, scientists have discovered microbes. Entire ecosystems living within Earth itself, feeding not on sunlight or even marine snow, but on chemicals exuded from the planet's crust. These microbes may make up over half of all biomass on Earth, and yet most people don't even know they exist. They don't glow, they don't swim, but they live. Quietly, patiently, without complaint. For millennia. Let's rise back just slightly to the seafloor again. Here, there's a special place, a crack in the crust, a wound. From it, black smoke pours out, not from fire, but from heat. This is a hydrothermal vent, a chimney of superheated mineral-rich water that blasts out at 400 degrees Celsius, 752 degrees Fahrenheit. And around this vent, life thrives. Whole colonies of tube worms, clams, crabs, and bacteria cluster around it, feeding on chemicals instead of sunlight. This process is called chemosynthesis, life powered not by the sun, but by the Earth itself. These vents might be where life on Earth began, and they may also be where life exists on other planets or moons. Europa, Enceladus, Titan, places with subsurface oceans and geothermal activity. Which means this isn't just the bottom of our ocean, It might be the prototype of life across the universe. So, as we end this first part of our descent, let's look around. No light, no sound, no sky, just darkness, pressure, and persistence. This is not a dead place. This is not a void. This is a kingdom, and we've only just entered its gates. We are now suspended in one of the strangest places on Earth. The twilight zone, also known as the mesopelagic, lies between 200 and 1,000 meters below the ocean's surface. It's a place where light still dares to enter, but only just. This is not the light you know. It doesn't warm, it doesn't illuminate, it haunts. Everything here is touched by a ghost light, pale and grey like the sky during an eclipse, just enough to cast shadows, not enough to see clearly. It's the last place the sun reaches and the first place where life begins to change. Pause a moment, picture it. You're surrounded by water so thick with blue that it feels like liquid dusk. Above you, the glow of the surface fades like a memory. Below you, a darkness as ancient as time. And all around you, motion. Fish, thousands, maybe millions, not like those you've seen in aquariums or tide pools. These are vertical migrants, creatures that rise every night to feed near the surface, then descend at dawn to hide in the shadows below. It's the largest migration on Earth, and you've never seen it. Every single night when the sky goes dark, the ocean comes alive. Billions of organisms ascend. Lanternfish, bristlemouths, shrimp, squid. They rise in columns that stretch for hundreds of meters. Then, before dawn, they sink again, down into the twilight, down into the hush. It happens every night, and we had no idea until a few decades ago. Let's meet some of the inhabitants of this dusky world. First, the bristlemouth. It's not much to look at, a small, silvery fish with needle teeth, but it may be the most abundant vertebrate on Earth. There are estimated to be hundreds of trillions of them in the ocean, possibly even more than that. We didn't even know their full extent until the 21st century. They were hiding in plain sight, avoiding fishing nets by diving deep during the day. A creature that exists in such quantity, yet goes unseen. Invisibility might just be the greatest survival strategy. Now look to your right. A slow flicker, then a flash. That's a lanternfish, lighting up tiny dots along its belly. These lights are called photophores, and they allow the fish to match the light from above, making them invisible to predators below. Yes, this is counter-illumination, a camouflage technique that mimics the fading sunlight. Even in darkness, deception is key. Predators here are keen, adapted to hunt by silhouette. So to survive, prey has learned to erase its own outline. It's like wearing a mask made of moonlight. Let's go deeper into biology. How do these fish create light? It isn't magic, it's chemistry. Inside their bodies, or sometimes in symbiosis with glowing bacteria, they carry compounds like luciferin, which react with oxygen to produce cold, glowing light. It's efficient, elegant, beautiful, and entirely independent from the sun. In the twilight zone, bioluminescence is the dominant form of communication. Light is used for everything, finding mates, luring prey, warning enemies, or simply navigating in the deep. In a world where voices don't carry and eyes barely function, light becomes language. And yet, not all creatures are content with a gentle glow. Some choose violence. Enter the vampire squid. It's small, only about the size of a football, but covered in crimson skin, with glowing blue eyes and webbed arms that resemble a cloak. Despite its name, it doesn't drink blood. It doesn't even hunt. It eats marine snow, dead organic matter drifting down from above. But when threatened, it performs a defensive display unlike anything else. It inverts its arms over its body, revealing rows of thorn-like projections. Then, it ejects a cloud of glowing mucus filled with bioluminescent particles. Imagine that, a glowing smokescreen in the deep, a ghostly spell cast into the water, then gone. It's easy to imagine these creatures as monsters, but they aren't. They're survivors, perfectly evolved for their world. The deep sea doesn't reward aggression, it rewards efficiency, cunning, stillness. Let's look again at the anglerfish, but a different species this time, the black sea devil. She lives in the upper midnight zone, just below the twilight. Her body is spherical, almost balloon-like, with a grotesque grin and a glowing lure extending from her head. But she is alone. Male anglerfish, much smaller and often eyeless, fuse themselves to the female's body during mating. They bite her side and their tissues merge. Over time, he becomes nothing more than a pair of testes permanently attached. It's disturbing and oddly poetic. In the deep sea, reproduction is so difficult, so rare, that love, if you can call it that, becomes a form of parasitism. But it's not just predators that haunt the twilight zone. There are jellies here, strange, translucent bells that drift with the currents. Some look like chandeliers, others like ribbons. Some, like the Atolla jellyfish, flash in spiraling blue strobes when attacked, attracting even larger predators to scare off their attackers. Think about that. Imagine being so vulnerable that your best defense is to summon a monster bigger than the one hunting you. Now we move on to something even more strange, the siphonophores. They look like jellyfish, but they're not a single animal. They are colonies, made up of dozens or even hundreds of genetically identical individuals called zooids, each specialized for a different task. One zooid handles propulsion, another digests food, another reproduces. They act together, but are not truly one creature. It's like a city floating through the sea, each building alive, each with a job, each part of the whole. Some siphonophores stretch longer than blue whales, making them the longest animals on Earth. And yet they are almost invisible, just drifting forever. Let's reflect. Why does so much of the ocean evolve towards silence, softness, and camouflage? Why are the creatures here not armored, but translucent, not noisy, but silent? Maybe the answer is simple. Here, energy is precious, food is rare, motion is expensive, so nature has chosen elegance. Why waste calories on war when you can win with stillness? We continue our slow drift. At these depths, the currents are ancient. Some of the water around you hasn't seen the surface in 1,000 years. Oceanographers call it thermohaline circulation, a slow conveyor belt that moves cold, dense water from the poles through the ocean's depths. The water we pass through now may have once touched an iceberg. It has seen no light since the Middle Ages, and now it flows past you. Time here bends, not because physics changes, but because nothing happens quickly. A deep-sea fish may live 50 years and never travel more than a mile. Some creatures breed only once in their lifetimes, as there is no urgency. Everything moves in cycles, in pulses, in migrations, in moon-driven flows. We live in seconds. The ocean lives in centuries. Before we leave the twilight zone, let's consider something sobering. This layer, the mesopelagic, may be the largest biomass reservoir on Earth. And yet, it's vanishing. Climate change, industrial fishing, deep-sea trawling and pollution threaten this fragile kingdom. We've barely begun to understand it, and already we are erasing it. Every night, as these creatures rise to feed, they carry carbon from the surface back into the deep, sequestering it, trapping it, locking it away from the atmosphere. They are part of Earth's natural carbon cycle. If we disrupt them, we disrupt that cycle, and the balance we thought permanent might tip. But for now, in this moment, the balance still holds, and we continue drifting. Take a look around. The darkness is deeper here, but it's still not total. Tiny points of light appear like stars, each one alive. The ocean is often compared to space, but in the twilight zone, it's more than a metaphor. It feels like space. The floating, the silence, the stars. Only these stars move. A slow pulse here, a glowing trail there, a sudden flicker, a dot, then gone. Bioluminescence isn't just beautiful, it's everywhere. Some scientists estimate that 3 out of 4 animals in the deep ocean can produce light. It's not a rare trick, it's the language of this world. Imagine if the only way to be heard was to shine. And yet, for all the glowing, most of what you see here is incomplete. Creatures with no eyes, or too many. Mouths with no jaws, teeth with no faces, jellies that look like ghosts, shrimp that glow with alarm, only to disappear. It's a world shaped not by beauty or symmetry, but by what works in the dark. You begin to wonder, what defines a creature? Is it a brain, a spine, a purpose? Or is it just the ability to persist, to float, to glow, to survive? You may now be passing through a curtain of krill, tiny crustaceans, no longer than your thumbnail. There are trillions of them in the ocean, each one fragile, translucent and short-lived, but together they are the base of countless food chains, from fish to whales to seabirds, and many of them live right here, in the twilight zone. They rise at night to feed on plankton near the surface, then sink before the sun returns. Each one carries a tiny parcel of carbon with it, removing it from the atmosphere and transporting it down. Billions of tiny elevators every night. They do more to stabilize Earth's climate than any machine we've ever invented, and no one thanks them. Let's talk predators again. The Twilight Zone may seem gentle, but danger is everywhere, especially for the slow, the bright, the careless. There's a fish here called the stoplight loosejaw, named for the glowing red patch beneath its eye. It produces red bioluminescent light is memory, a rare and pressure is law. Why red? You've felt it coming. Because red light doesn't travel far in water. The darkness almost no creature in the deep can see it. The light slipping behind you when the loose jaw lights up red, slowly, it can see its prey without sound, but its prey can't see it. Now it's like hunting through invisible night vision goggles and finally, perfect ambush. This another predator floats nearby, a region stretching from eel, 1,000 meters to 4,000 meters below the surface. It has a head like a shadow. There is no dawn here, and a jaw that unhinges to reveal a balloon-like mouth. Because there is no light. Capable of swallowing prey nearly its strongest sunlight, born 93 million miles away, dies before it can reach this scarce here. When you find a meal here, you take all of it. Lives by even if it's almost as big as you. Take a breath. You get the sense that the rules of surface life don't apply. For awareness, everything is designed for extremes. You are now deeper beneath the sea than most people will ever imagine, let alone experience. Feel how quiet it is here. Whales stop diving. Even with predators and prey all around, with the atmosphere is calm, reinforced titanium, measured, deliberate, where pressure reaches chaos of a coral atmospheres. This is not the rush of a river. The weight of a dozen elephants pressing down on every square inch of your body. The ocean, like space, has time, more time than you can imagine. And not in abundance, weirdness flourishes. Persistence. It is quiet. It is slow. You may now be passing by something that looks like a glass feather. Let's talk comb jelly or ctenophore. You and I are surface creatures. We evolved in one atmosphere. It doesn't sting. Even a slight difference. It has climbing a mountain, diving into a swimming pool, microscopic hairs that beat in waves, propelling it forward. Now imagine 400 times that. Light catches those cilia and scatters in all directions. Only looks like a rainbow crush. A silent, but the creatures here, they're not just surviving, but it reflects the faintest light from around it. Shimmering like a drifting prism, not in spite of the pressure, refract their own bioluminescence, appearing to pulse with colour. Take the Haddle even in pure blackness, found in the Mariana Trench, and endless. Its bones are soft, its muscles watery, its body almost translucent. The Twilight Zone is not just one ecosystem, laced with a molecule called TMAO. Drops steeply, the same compound that gives shallows above to icy shadows below. But here, salinity plays a different role. Oxygen stabilizing proteins currents twist and pull in different directions. Its body is like a biological creating layers of movement. Nature's engineering has no rival. Some so stable they remain unchanged for centuries. Shrimp-like scavenger creatures here several inches long with a hard exoskeleton thick and a slow cry, and they're eaten. It feeds on whatever the ocean offers. Can't breathe. Dead jellyfish. It's a tightrope walk, played out over millennia, marine snow, and somehow life balances it perfectly from above. And it's patient. Now imagine a creature that doesn't live down here permanently. Food is rare. Visits. There are no feasts, only leftovers. Capable of diving over 2,000 meters, it plunges into the twilight and midnight zones to hunt its favourite prey. Is one of the most beautiful processes in all of nature. The whale descends for nearly an hour. We've mentioned it before. Its lungs collapse under organic matter. Its heartbeat drifting slowly from the ocean's echolocation. A series of loud clicks, eggshells, microbes, dust, skin, the bones. A piece of snow is a relic. Then each flake, a memory of something that once lived in the light of times over its life. Weeks, sometimes months. A mammal until they settle on the seafloor, adapted for darkness, or are eaten mid-fall. Each dive is like a pilgrimage into the entire midnight zone depends on its survival. Life in the deepest, dark,
We've now spent some time drifting
We've now spent some time drifting in this strange twilight world.
in the sun.
You may be feeling it,
But there is something
stillness, something
The cutter,
calm, stranger,
a
slow erasure of time. Imagine
Here,
walking across
light
a pitch
and
black
dark
desert
are
of
not
soft silt,
opposites,
and
They
suddenly
blend.
you come across
Here,
a pillar. Creatures are not
belching
defined by
black
their
smoke
shapes into the ocean,
but by their
It
glow.
is not fire.
Here,
it glows. Fear is a
not
flicker,
smoke,
a
but
flash,
superheated
a form,
water,
drifting
more than
close,
750
and then silent
degrees
again.
Fahrenheit,
400 degrees Celsius. Let's linger just a little longer. This is a
Watch that stream of marine snow
and
falling
it may be
gently
one of the
past
most
you.
important discoveries in the
Particles of
history of
dead plankton,
science. Fecal matter,
discovered in the
bits of
late
shell and sand.
1970s,
Hydrothermal vents shattered
sometimes
everything we
taking
thought
weeks
we
to
knew
drift
about
just a
life.
few hundred meters.
We used to believe that
This
all
snow
life on
feeds the
Earth came from
entire deep
sunlight,
sea,
either
carries the
directly through
memory of
photosynthesis
photosynthesis
or
downward.
indirectly
Every
by
speck is a
consuming
message,
something
a
that
relic.
had. The sea
But
forgets
here,
nothing.
at
Vents scattered along the
and the
ocean
twilight
floor,
zone,
we
is
found
its
entire
archive.
ecosystems built around chemosynthesis.
Before we leave,
listen. The ability to turn chemicals, not light. The
into
water
energy.
here carries sound
Picture
better
this.
than almost anywhere on Earth. A chimney of rocks,
single
spewing
whale
minerals
song can
like
travel
hydrogen
thousands of
sulfide
miles
in the deep, all around it.
Some believe the
glowing
low
bacteria,
frequency calls of
blue
feasting on
whales
the
can cross
chemicals
entire oceans
and
feeding on those
Think of that.
bacteria. Giant tube
One
worms,
call,
some over 6 feet long.
one breath.
No mouth, no gut.
Heard across a planet.
Just a symbiotic relationship
single
with
creature
bacteria
speaking
living
to the
inside
world.
them. The worms feed the bacteria chemicals.
so we
the
reach the
bacteria
edge.
feed the worms
Beyond
energy.
here,
the light
it's not a
disappears
food
entirely.
chain.
It's
We
a chemical
enter the
alliance.
true midnight.
Around them,
But
other
the
creatures
twilight
gather.
zone
will stay with us.
Blind crabs,
It is not just
white
a depth.
shrimp,
It is a
weird
threshold.
limpets,
and even
between
octopuses,
light and dark,
all drawn to the
between
warmth,
the known
new
and the
nutrients.
mysterious.
These vents
between
are
what we
oases
think we
in a
understand
desert, and
what
they
still
may be the
waits,
first places
hidden.
life ever began on Earth.
We leave behind the glowing
Some scientists
clouds,
believe that life started
migrating
not in warm
billions,
tidal pools,
the
but
long
in
shadows
vents like
and
these,
luminous fangs,
protected from
that
UV
descend
radiation, rich in
the midnight
minerals,
zone.
full of energy. And if life began here, then life might exist elsewhere too. On Europa, a moon of Jupiter, or Enceladus, orbiting Saturn, there are subsurface oceans with potential vents, sealed beneath thick crusts of ice. No sunlight, but plenty of heat, plenty of chemistry. If there's life there, it might look a lot like this. Tube worms, microbes, crabs, or maybe something even stranger. But for now, we return to Earth, to the vent fields scattered across the seafloor. They don't last forever. A vent may stay active for only a few decades, then shut off. The ecosystem collapses. Creatures either move or die, and the process begins again, somewhere else. Life in the midnight zone is temporary but determined. It lives not by permanence, but by opportunity. You're beginning to feel it now, aren't you? The slowness of it all, the way time drips instead of flows. Down here, some creatures live for centuries. A Greenland shark, for example, may be swimming above us, rarely seen, barely moving, living for up to 500 years. It doesn't live in the midnight zone, but it touches it, crosses it, just like us now, slow, silent, timeless. Now, something else drifts into view. It's large, bone-white, hollow. It's a whale fall, the final descent of a giant. When a whale dies, its body, many tons of protein and fat, falls to the sea floor. What happens next is extraordinary. Stage by stage, the whale becomes an entire ecosystem. First, scavengers arrive. Sharks, hagfish, amphipods. They strip the flesh, tearing muscle and blubber, carving the body to its bones. Then come the enrichment opportunists, worms and crabs that burrow into the bones and sediment, feeding on leftovers. Finally, in the sulfophilic stage, the bones themselves become a host for bacteria that break down fats and release sulfur. These bacteria feed specialized worms, like the bizarre Osedax, also called the zombie worm. It has no mouth, no eyes, no stomach. It secretes acid to burrow into bone. It grows root-like structures to house bacteria. A single whale fall can support life for over 100 years. In death, The whale becomes a world, and that's the pattern of the deep. Nothing is wasted. What we see as an ending is just a recycling, a continuation, a transformation. Even in the deepest dark, life finds a way. Pause again, float. You may feel yourself drifting farther than before, the pressure heavier, the silence deeper. You are now beyond 4,000 meters. This is the edge of the abyss. You have spent your whole life on the surface, living in light, hearing wind, birds, voices, laughter. But now, all of that is gone. You are in a world where the loudest sound is your own thoughts, where the only light is what life itself creates, where time is a spiral, not a line. And somehow, you feel calm. Because here, there are no expectations, no urgency, no noise, no direction, just depth, and depth is honest. The creatures you meet now are almost philosophical, like the sea cucumber, a soft-bodied scavenger that floats and crawls across the mud, ingesting sediment and digesting organic particles. Or the deep-sea octopus, which lays a clutch of eggs and then guards them for years, sometimes up to 4 years, without eating. A sacrifice, a vigil, a testament to endurance. You may also see glass sponges, ancient animals that build skeletons of silica like delicate crystal towers on the seafloor. They are filter feeders. They live for centuries. Some may be over 1,000 years old. They do not move. They do not hunt. They do not glow. But they exist, and their skeletons form reefs that shelter countless smaller creatures. Even the stillest life can be a foundation. And so, here we are, in the quietest place on earth, where sound does not echo, where time does not hurry, where life moves like poetry carved into black stone. But our journey through the midnight zone isn't over just yet. There's something else you need to feel, not just hear. Let's talk about the cold. Down here, the water is ancient. It hasn't touched sunlight in centuries, maybe longer. And it's cold, just above freezing, around 2 to 4 degrees Celsius, or 35 to 39 degrees Fahrenheit. But it never freezes. Why? Because saltwater requires much colder temperatures to solidify, and the immense pressure keeps molecules packed tightly, resisting that change. It's not just cold in the way a winter breeze is cold. It's slow cold, deep cold, the kind that doesn't sting, but presses. Every movement takes more effort. Every heartbeat is cautious. This cold isn't hostile, it's indifferent. It doesn't care if you adapt or die. And yet, here you are, still drifting, still listening. You may see polychaete worms, bright red, feathery and strangely beautiful, anchored to the mud. They feed passively, filtering particles from the water or burrowing into sediment. Their lives are neither quick nor violent. They are quiet custodians of the seafloor. Everything in the midnight zone seems to accept its role. No one rushes, no one shouts, no one needs to be more than what they are. Let's return now to the idea of sound, because this zone has its own voice, even if it's not one you're used to. You might not hear crashing waves or chirping fish, but if you listen closely, there are clicks, rumbles, groans. Some come from distant tectonic shifts, others from creatures that pulse, click, or sing. A deep-sea fish might create low-frequency sounds to attract a mate, so low they can travel for dozens of kilometers. There are even regions in the ocean known as SOFAR channels, deep zones where sound travels farther than anywhere else on Earth. Whales use them. Submarines use them. If a blue whale sings in the North Atlantic, a counterpart in the Arctic may hear it. The ocean is not mute, it's simply speaking a different language. Now let's explore the creatures that defy the boundaries of what we consider normal. One such life form is the colossal squid. Larger than any squid known to science until recently. They've only been seen a handful of times, dead, washed up, or briefly caught on camera. Their eyes are the largest in the animal kingdom, the size of dinner plates. Why such huge eyes in such deep darkness? To see the faintest bioluminescent flashes from predators, from prey, from the soft glow of something stirring in the distance. Their tentacles are lined with rotating hooks. They live in silence, battle sperm whales in the deep and vanish again into myth. Then there's the barrel-eye fish, transparent head, tubular, upward-pointing eyes that rotate inside like tiny turrets. For years, scientists believed the glowing green orbs on its head were eyes, but they were wrong. Its real eyes are inside its skull, pointed upward to detect silhouettes above, then pivoting forward to hunt. It's not just strange, it's efficient, the kind of innovation you get when evolution has millions of years and absolute freedom. Let's talk size. While the shallows often favour smaller, agile creatures, the deep rewards giants. It's called deep-sea gigantism, and no one fully understands why it happens. Maybe it's the cold, maybe it's pressure, maybe it's the need to store energy. Whatever the reason, the deep sea is home to giant isopods, monstrous jellyfish, and amphipods the size of rats. Everything down here moves slowly, but grows endlessly. You get the feeling that the deeper you go, the more likely you are to meet something that shouldn't exist. And yet, it does. Let's pause and pull back for a moment. The midnight zone covers nearly half of the entire ocean. Half of our planet's surface lies in this darkness, this uncharted, unseen realm. And we have explored less than 1% of it. That means the midnight zone is the largest habitat on Earth. And also the least known. Think of how many forms of life might still be hidden here, how many signals we haven't yet heard, how many truths lie unlit and undisturbed. Even now, some deep-sea creatures have only been discovered once, a single sighting, a fleeting moment of clarity through a camera lens. We name them, catalogue them, speculate, but they vanish again into the deep. They are not ours to keep, just to witness. And perhaps the most extraordinary truth of all. Some deep-sea species live lives utterly unaffected by us. No noise pollution, no plastic, no overfishing, no boats. They've never seen a light bulb. They've never heard an engine. They have existed here, unchanged, for millions of years. In a world where human impact is nearly total, the deep ocean remains one of the last sacred sanctuaries. Let's close this chapter of the journey with a thought. Above us on land, life is fast, loud, crowded. We measure time by alarms, schedules, deadlines. We are encouraged to shine brightly, to shout, to move faster, to be more. But here, none of that exists, and yet life is still here. Without rushing, without noise, without light. Maybe we don't need to live in the deep. Maybe we just need to learn from it. Its patience, its silence, its acceptance. Maybe the deep ocean isn't telling us to explore it. Maybe it's asking us to remember what matters. Stillness, simplicity, slowness, depth. From this pressure-filled world, we descend again, further than before. The midnight zone is vast, but even it ends. Below us lies something rarer, more silent, more extreme. The realm of trenches, of crushed earth and ancient quiet. The Hadal zone, and it's waiting, You're now descending into a place where the Earth folds into itself, where continents collide and the seafloor is torn and swallowed. This is the Hadal Zone, named after Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. A fitting name, because down here, at depths greater than 6,000 meters, or nearly 4 miles, the ocean is no longer wide and open. It is compressed into trenches, pits and canyons so deep, so hidden, they are barely measurable by satellite. This is the final descent, the deepest a human or a thought can go. Here are about 33 known oceanic trenches around the world, but none are as deep or as iconic as the Mariana Trench. Located in the Western Pacific near Guam, this trench plunges to a known depth of 10,984 meters, nearly 7 miles beneath the surface. The deepest point is called the Challenger Deep, and standing at its edge, if you could stand, you would feel the full weight of over 1,000 atmospheres pressing down on every inch of you. It's so deep that if you dropped Mount Everest into it, the summit would still be more than 2 kilometers underwater. Let that sink in. Even Earth's tallest mountain cannot reach the surface from the bottom of this trench. But it's not just about depth, it's about what lies there. Because against every expectation, every assumption that nothing could survive such pressure, cold and darkness, life exists. Let's dive in. The Hadal Zone is not a flat plain like the abyssal regions above. It is twisted, fractured, jagged. Subduction zones where tectonic plates collide form steep-walled chasms that stretch for hundreds of kilometers. Some trenches are narrow like scars. Others are wide enough to fit cities, but all of them are almost completely unexplored. Fewer than 5 people have ever descended to the bottom of the Challenger Deep. And yet, we send robots, cameras, microphones, and what we found is staggering. First, amphipods. These crustaceans, similar to shrimp, live in enormous numbers even at the greatest depths. They're scavengers, feeding on marine snow, sinking fish, and whatever detritus happens to fall into their world. But Hadal amphipods are different. They've evolved special enzymes, unique pressure-resistant membranes, and molecules that prevent their cells from collapsing. Some even produce gelatinous coatings that act like natural insulation against pressure. They are fragile, yet resilient. Small, but mighty. Then there are the Hadal snailfish. Discovered just a few years ago, these translucent, soft-bodied fish were seen at 8,000 meters, and then again at 8,178 meters, the deepest known fish ever recorded. They are pale, delicate, with ghost-like skin and broad fins. They don't have swim bladders. No need for buoyancy in a place where floating is the default state of things. Instead, their flesh is flexible. Their enzymes are pressure-adapted. Their lives are slow, unhurried, and yet they thrive. And then, silence. For hundreds, even thousands of meters below the Hadal snailfish, we don't know what exists. There may be no fish deeper than 8,200 meters. The pressure becomes too extreme. The energy demands too great. But perhaps we simply haven't looked closely enough. Let's step out of biology for a moment and talk about humanity, because we haven't always stayed away from the trench. In 1960, 2 men made history. Jacques Picard and Don Walsh, aboard a vessel called the Bathyscaphe Trieste, descended to the bottom of the Challenger Deep. Their submersible had a steel sphere 5 inches thick, with a small porthole no bigger than a dinner plate. The dive took almost 5 hours. They reached the bottom, 10,916 meters. And what did they see? Not much. Clouds of silt. A few strange creatures, but what stayed with them most was the silence. Jacques Picard later said, "The bottom appeared lunar, desert-like, but it was not dead. They saw a fish too, but it was never recorded and remains debated. Still, what matters is this: they went there, to the deepest place on Earth, and they came back. More than 50 years later, James Cameron, the filmmaker behind Titanic and Avatar, built his own submersible, the Deep Sea Challenger, and dove solo to the Challenger Deep in 2012. He described it as greenish, not black. Not silent, but filled with low creaks and groans of water against metal. He saw shrimp-like amphipods, a seafloor that looked folded, crushed, ancient, and again, silence. Not absence, but presence. A presence so deep it didn't need sound. Why do we go there? Why do we reach for what is so far beyond comfort, beyond survival? Maybe because depth changes us. Just as pressure changes the shape of creatures down here, maybe pressure, the metaphysical kind, changes us. Maybe the trench isn't just a feature of Earth, maybe it's a metaphor. Now return to the trench floor. To the seafloor that looks like a wrinkled bedsheet pressed by time. There's no colour here. There's barely form. Just shifting mud, scattered bones, fragments of shell. And yet, scientists have found microbial mats here. Tiny bacterial colonies thriving on chemical energy in the sediment. Some feed on hydrogen, others on methane, others on radioactive decay. It's not just survival, it's flourishing in slow motion. And then we find something haunting. Plastic. Yes, human debris. A plastic bag, a candy wrapper, a tangle of fishing line. Even at 11,000 meters, our signature reaches the seafloor. A study in 2020 found microplastics in the digestive systems of deep-sea amphipods, from the Mariana Trench to the Kermadec Trench. We thought we were leaving only footprints, but we've left fingerprints everywhere. Still, life continues. Not because of us, but in spite of us. One of the most fascinating discoveries in the trenches is the presence of viruses, not as enemies, but as regulators. Some viruses infect bacteria and archaea, keeping their populations in check. Others help bacteria swap genes, sharing tools for survival. Even down here, life is not solitary. It's connected, threaded by DNA, balanced by unseen forces, sustained by unseen hands. Have you ever wondered how it feels to be in a place where no sunlight has ever reached? No history books, no footprints, no wars, just silence, pressure, darkness, and existence. That's the Hadal Zone, a museum of Earth's oldest truths, unchanged for millions of years, and perhaps still changing us. Let's step back one more time. The trenches make up less than 2% of the seafloor, and yet they contain the greatest depth ever recorded. We have better maps of the moon than we do of Earth's trenches. But every year, we go a little deeper. We send more robots, take more samples, and the more we see, the more we realize the deep is not dead, it is alive, ancient, active, and most of all, mysterious. So now let's rise, just slightly, leaving the Hadal depths behind, leaving behind pressure that crushes steel, letting go of what we thought we knew, and carrying with us something new. That the Earth doesn't just hold life, it hides it. It grows it in silence. It shelters it in darkness. And even in the deepest trench, it dreams, but those dreams are far from lifeless. The Hadal Zone is not a tomb. It is a cradle, a place where nature has written some of its most enduring verses, carved not in light, but in pressure, silence, and time. To understand this place is not just to learn science, It is to meet a version of life that is beyond our imagination, and we're still just beginning to listen. Let's dive deeper into the creatures that have been found here. Take, for instance, the discovery of deep-sea cucumbers in trenches like the Kermadec and Tonga. These aren't your average seafloor slugs. They are translucent, balloon-like creatures that hover just above the seabed, almost as if they are flying. They pulse gently, slowly, feeding by sweeping detritus from the sediment with their tentacle-like arms. Some glow faintly, others are bioluminescent only when touched. They are a perfect symbol of the deep, harmless, humble, and entirely adapted to the impossible. Now imagine drifting past one of the abyssal hills that border a trench wall. The terrain changes, it becomes more uneven, pitted, rugged. These underwater landscapes are not featureless. They're ancient sculptures, formed by tectonic collisions and shaped by earthquakes that ripple silently through the crust. In one spot, a wall rises like a broken monument. In another, a dark fissure opens wide enough to swallow a building. It's hard to tell what's natural and what's carved by time. You start to wonder, is the Earth hiding something here? Not out of malice, but simply because it can. Consider this. The average depth of the world's oceans is about 3,700 meters. But the deepest point, Challenger Deep, goes 3 times farther. What does it mean for something to be that far from what's average? In the deep ocean, we find outliers of every kind, not just in depth, but in biology. The xenophyophore, for example, is one of the largest single-celled organisms on Earth. It can grow to the size of a dinner plate, and yet it's only one cell. It lives in trenches like the Puerto Rico Trench, nestled among sediment, feeding on particles it filters from the water. It builds itself into delicate, lace-like shapes, using minerals from the environment. An organism so simple, and yet so artistic, proof that even in darkness life makes time for beauty. Now, let's talk geology. Because trenches aren't just holes, they're seams. The Hadal zone is where Earth's plates are pulled beneath one another, in a process called subduction. Rock melts, mountains collapse, earthquakes are born. These zones are the birthplaces of volcanoes, the triggers of tsunamis, and the keys to unlocking our planet's past. Sediment collects here, thousands of feet deep, a record of millions of years, layer by layer. Every earthquake, every extinction, every rise and fall in climate, written in silt. And as sediment accumulates, it traps gases, carbon, heat, even microfossils. If you were to dig here, not with shovels but with data, you could read Earth's biography at every page. Damp, heavy, but still legible. There is also something else, something eerily poetic. Some scientists believe new life forms are still evolving here, cut off from the rest of the world by sheer depth and isolation. It's called adaptive radiation, when life, given a new niche, explodes into new forms. The trenches may not just be remnants of Earth's past, they could be laboratories of evolution. Just imagine, right now, at the bottom of the Philippine Trench or the Sunda Trench, a creature may be swimming that has never been seen, never been recorded, not even by accident. And it doesn't care. It doesn't need to be known to be real. We often say the ocean is unexplored, but it's more than that. It's unfelt. We haven't just failed to see it, we've failed to imagine it. What would it mean if intelligence existed here, not like us, not with tools or language, but with awareness, a kind of deep cognition, tuned not to light or sound, but to vibration, chemistry, and flow? The mind of the trench may not be fast, but it might be old, patient, unhurried, and perhaps wise. The idea of something waiting at the bottom of the world has haunted our stories for centuries. Cultures across the globe spoke of underworlds, places below where spirits dwell. From the Greek Hades to the Hindu Patala to the Japanese Yomi, the myth is always the same. Down below lies something vast, hidden and sacred. Perhaps these myths weren't wrong. Perhaps they were just metaphors for something we were too young to understand. Not a place of death, but a place of origin. Let's pause again. Let the silence return. Because in the Hadal zone, silence is not empty. It is concentrated. Every creak of water pressure, every flex of the seafloor. They're not noise. They're ritual. The ocean is speaking, but it only whispers here. And it only whispers to those who listen slowly. Now imagine, what happens when a whale dies in the Hadal zone? How far does the scent carry? How long until a scavenger finds it? In the abyss, a whale fall may last 100 years. In the trench, maybe longer. Maybe the entire food web changes, just for that one gift from above. You begin to see how life here isn't separate from the rest of the ocean. It's just on a different schedule. Let's rise slightly in thought again. This part of the Earth, the Hadal zone, may also be key to our planet's climate system. These trenches act as carbon traps, pulling organic material deep into the crust, burying it for millennia. Volcanoes may later release it back, or it may stay trapped. Either way, it's part of the Great Carbon Conveyor Belt, one that regulates our atmosphere. What happens in the deep does not stay in the deep. The Hadal zone is not separate from you, it's beneath you, part of your planet, part of your history, and maybe your future. Some scientists even believe the trenches could be places to store carbon, a form of deep carbon sequestration, a way to undo what we've done to the sky by placing it in the sea. But we must be cautious, because every time we've explored the deep for our gain, mining, drilling, dumping, we've brought with us not understanding, but assumption. The deep sea is not ours to conquer, it is ours to respect. We are now nearing the close of this descent. You've journeyed over 11,000 meters below the surface, through the twilight, the midnight, the abyss, and finally into the Hadal. You've passed through layers of silence, pressure, wonder, and what you've found is not emptiness, but life. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that asks for reflection. So what is the Hadal zone really? A graveyard? A cathedral? A library? Or is it a mirror, held up to a species that has only just begun to look inward? Maybe it's all those things, and maybe it's more. Because when we look into the Hadal depths, we don't just see pressure and dark, we see ourselves, reflected in water too deep to measure, too ancient to ignore, too alive to forget. What if the ocean wasn't just a place? What if it was a memory, not just of water and salt and waves, but of time itself? A record of everything Earth has seen, of every storm, every birth, every extinction, held not in ink or stone, but in motion, because the sea never forgets. And as we rise back toward the light, let's carry with us what we've learned, not just about depth, but about meaning. Let's begin not at the bottom, but at the beginning. Over 3.5 billion years ago, life began in the sea. Tiny cells clustering near hydrothermal vents, drawing energy not from the sun, but from the Earth's own breath. The ocean was our first home, and even now, every heartbeat, every drop of blood, every cell in your body remembers it. We carry the sea inside us. Salt in our veins, waves in our brain, rhythms we never consciously learned, because we didn't need to. We were born knowing them. As we rise slowly through the deep, the darkness begins to thin. Not quickly, not dramatically, but gently. Pressure eases. Light hints. Above, the twilight zone waits. Below, the midnight begins to blur into memory. And in between, we begin to reflect, not just on what we saw, but on what it means. We often think of the ocean as alien, but that's only because we look at it through the lens of land. We live on solid ground, we breathe air, we chase light. But the sea does none of these things. It doesn't rise, it envelops. It doesn't echo, it absorbs. It doesn't reveal, it waits. And that waiting, that stillness, has made it Earth's most honest mirror. Every layer of the ocean holds a truth. At the surface, we see movement, waves and tides, ships and storms. It reflects what we feel in daily life. Chaos, energy, momentum, but beneath, deeper down, there's a different story. The deeper you go, the quieter it gets. And perhaps the same is true for us. At 200 meters, you enter the twilight zone. Light fades, color disappears. Things begin to live in contrast rather than clarity. Isn't that how memory works? Faded around the edges, sharpened at the center. Moments that glow, others that drift. Creatures we remember, not for what they were, but for how they made us feel. Deeper still, the midnight zone. Silence. Pressure. Persistence. Here, life isn't loud, it isn't quick, and it simply is. This is the realm of the subconscious, of dreams that don't need to make sense, where the laws of biology bend to the rules of necessity, and still, life survives. Here, survival isn't about strength, it's about surrender. Surrender to the environment, to time, to transformation. And then the Hadal zone. The deepest truths, buried, unseen, essential. Isn't that where we keep our own truths too? Deep down, hidden, crushed by time, and yet still intact, still alive. The ocean is often thought of as a barrier, a frontier, a place to explore. But what if it's not just something to cross? What if it's something to understand? The sea doesn't resist us. It simply waits until we're ready to listen. And when we do, we find that everything we thought was lost is still there. Just quiet. Just deep. Consider this. Every breath you take has been filtered by the sea. The ocean produces more than half of the oxygen on Earth, thanks to microscopic plankton floating near the surface. Tiny, invisible drifters, giving you life. You've never seen them. You probably never will, but they sustain you just the same, just like so many things in our lives. The unseen, the unnoticed, the quietly essential. The sea teaches us something else, that silence is not the absence of information. It is the presence of meaning. When the whale sings, it sings in miles, not meters. When the deep fish glow, they are not shouting, they are signaling. And when the sea is calm, it is not empty. It is full of restraint, a lesson we all could use. Let's talk about time. We measure our lives in minutes, days, years. But the ocean moves in centuries. Currents that take 1,000 years to circulate. Sediments that take 1,000,000 years to settle. Species that haven't changed in tens of millions of years. It reminds us that urgency is not the same as importance. Sometimes, the most powerful things grow slowly. Unseen, uncelebrated, but enduring. We rise now toward the twilight zone, where the light begins to bleed back in. Just a faint shimmer, a suggestion. It's enough to begin seeing outlines again. Silhouettes, color, the return of perspective. This is not a return to what we were. It's a rebirth. We've been changed by what we've seen. The silence has spoken. The dark has taught. The depth has mirrored back what matters. We so often think of the ocean as mysterious, and it is. But perhaps it's also familiar, because in every wave, in every drop, we recognize something of ourselves. The capacity to be still, the strength to carry weight, the instinct to protect what matters most, and the beauty of simply existing, quietly, deeply, meaningfully. Now, one final truth before we surface. The ocean is not just a memory. It is a warning. It holds the signals of climate change, of coral death, of warming currents, of shifting life. It has carried our waste to its deepest corners. It has absorbed our carbon, cooled our heat, buffered our storms. But it cannot do so forever. The ocean is not limitless. It is generous, and generosity has limits. So what can we do? Start by respecting what we cannot see. Start by preserving what we haven't yet discovered. Start by realizing that to protect the ocean is to protect ourselves. Now we return. The surface shimmers above you. Sound grows louder. Light returns. The water warms. You break through air ... sky ... wind. And yet, you're not the same. You are heavier with meaning, lighter with perspective, full, not of facts, but of feeling. Because you've gone to the quietest place on earth and come back listening. So let this not be the end of a video. Let it be the beginning of something else. A thought, a memory, a vow. To protect what's still untouched. To wonder what still waits. To honor what doesn't ask for praise. Because the ocean does not speak loudly. It does not beg for your attention. It does not need your eyes to exist. But if you listen, really listen, it will tell you everything. Still, there's more it hasn't told us. More it's waiting to whisper in time. Because the sea isn't done shaping us. Not biologically, not emotionally, not cosmically. It continues to speak in tides, in silence, in cycles. And sometimes it speaks not to the scientist, but to the dreamer. So let's drift a little longer, shall we? One last float through the surface layers. Not just of water, but of meaning. The ocean as our archive. We've walked through cathedrals, we've built libraries, we've filled hard drives with data. But the oldest library on Earth isn't made of paper or servers. It's made of layers of silt, pressed into the ocean floor like pages in a never-ending story. Each layer tells us something. A volcanic eruption from 74,000 years ago, a bloom of plankton from a warmer sea, a sudden drop in salinity that marked the end of an ice age. The ocean is the archive of the planet's past, and every storm, every bloom, every death leaves its trace. It doesn't remember in words, it remembers in chemistry, in texture, in depth. And if you know how to read it, it will show you what we've been. And maybe what we're becoming. Every human being began in water. The womb is a sea. Amniotic fluid mirrors the salt levels of ancient oceans. We begin our lives suspended, drifting, pulsing, just like the creatures we've met on this journey. And even now, water makes up about 60% of the human body. Your brain? 75% water. Your lungs? Also mostly water. Even your bones, solid as they seem, contain water too. You are, in many ways, a walking tide pool. So when you say the ocean feels familiar, that it soothes you, calms you, clears your mind, it's because it's home. A part of you has always lived there. Maybe not in form, but in essence. Water is the only substance on Earth that exists naturally in all three states. Solid, liquid, gas. It is movement and stillness, sound and silence. It transmits waves, carries light, erodes rock, and lifts entire ships, but it also does something quieter. It listens. Sound travels faster and farther in water than in air. Whale songs carry across entire oceans. Seismic vibrations rumble through the crust and into the sea. And still, the ocean is never noisy. It's a place where sound is absorbed, filtered, softened. What other element lets the world speak while remaining silent itself? The sea has always stirred us. From the earliest civilizations, the ocean was more than geography. It was spiritual. In Polynesian mythology, Tangaroa was god of the sea, creator and destroyer. In Norse legend, the sea was ruled by Aegir, a force of both celebration and destruction. Even in modern faiths, the sea remains symbolic. A place of baptism, of rebirth, of reflection. We go to the sea when we're overwhelmed. We walk beside it when we're grieving. We scatter ashes across it when we say goodbye. Why? Because it feels like the closest thing we have to eternity. A place vast enough to carry our losses and gentle enough to hold them. The ocean is warming. Its chemistry is changing. As carbon dioxide from the atmosphere dissolves into the sea, it becomes more acidic. This threatens coral reefs, plankton, shellfish, entire chains of life. Warming waters push fish to cooler places. Storms grow stronger, currents shift, and with them the patterns we've relied on for generations. And yet, for all it does, the ocean remains quiet. It doesn't strike back. It doesn't shout. It simply absorbs until it can't. Then it changes. And it changes us. Imagine this. One day the ocean stops absorbing carbon. It releases what it has held. Currents stall. Oxygen drops. Marine life collapses. This isn't fiction. It's a possible future. And not in centuries, in decades. Unless we change the way we live. The ocean doesn't need us to save it. We need to save ourselves by honouring it. After all this, after the trenches and the twilight, the whales and the worms, what has the ocean taught us? It's taught us that silence is strength, that stillness holds complexity, that patience can be powerful. It's taught us that survival is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's a slow drift, a flicker of bioluminescence in the dark, a fish with no eyes that still finds its way. The ocean has taught us humility, that we are not the center of the story, that we are latecomers to a world already filled with miracles, that there are entire kingdoms we'll never see, but must still protect. And maybe most of all, it has taught us this. Depth matters. In water, in thought, in being. As we finally breach the surface, the sky unfolds again above you. The stars, the wind, the rhythm of the waves against your ears. You may feel like you've returned to where you began, but something is different now. You're carrying something, not just knowledge, but a sense, a deeper understanding, not of facts, but of feelings, the kind that whisper, not shout, the kind that stay with you. You may never dive to 10,000 meters. You may never see a snailfish or a hydrothermal vent. But that's not the point. The point is to know they exist. To know there are places on Earth still untouched by human light, still ruled by darkness, still thriving in silence, and to let that knowledge soften you. Because maybe after all of this, the ocean isn't just a place. Maybe it's a teacher, a keeper, a soul, old as the earth itself, asking only that we respect what we cannot see, that we honour what we may never understand, that we cherish what will go on long after we're gone, So let's sit here one last moment. Suspended between surface and depth, memory and presence, you and the ocean. Let your breath match the tide. Let your thoughts dissolve like salt into water. Let the stillness become enough. And when the time comes to move, to rise, to speak, let the silence stay with you. Let it remind you of where you've been, of what still waits below, of what still needs protecting, and most of all, of what it means to be deep.